Hey everyone, how's it going? It's your boy Skilled Fawn, and today we're going to be doing an Elden Ring challenge run. Let's waste no time and get straight into the rules. Starting off, we can only use the poison / deadly poison status effects. Like I did with the previous status only runs, the weapon must have the status effect beforehand, meaning I cannot get the web blade and put it on standard weapons. This way things will be more interesting and it'll make me try out new weapons. Next, no spirit summons. Though there are some spirit summons that apply poison, I want to just test myself. This way things will be more clear. If you want to see spirit summons in my runs, check out the Deathblight and Madness only runs, where I use summons that fit the theme. Subsequently, I must beat the game and DLC. Afterwards, I must defeat all remembrance bosses. I cannot use armor, except for Rykard, more on this later. Lastly, glitches and or exploits are allowed, so expect some cheeky ways to get around areas and take down bosses. I'm excited to share this run with everyone. Make sure to smash that like button, comment, and subscribe to help support me and the channel. Hit the bell icon to be notified when I post similar challenges. Now, let's get into the run. Talking to Melina, we get torn, and we are now able to traverse the map with ease. Making our way into Caelid and into Abandoned Cave, we find our first couple of weapons. First is the Serpent Bow, though after grabbing it, I died shortly afterwards. Lastly is the Venomous Fang's fist weapons. These are pretty fun to use. Next, we stop by this merchant in Dragon Barrow to get some poison arrows. After prepping a bit, we enter Margit's fight. Though the damage isn't the greatest, the poison damage was really helpful. Since we deal such low damage, I was able to poison proc him a few times, which helped a ton. Eventually, we take down Margit and acquire another talisman slot. Making our way towards the end of Castle Stormvale, we find Godric the Grafted, the first remembrance boss in this run. Similarly, with Margit, the base damage of these weapons has been poor. Soon we will need to upgrade our arsenal alongside leveling our character more to be able to combat the stronger foes we will face. Poison so far has been fairly useful, and so I'm curious to see how this will do later on. Comment your predictions below. Do you think poison will hold up endgame / DLC, or will it start to become not as useful? I'm interested to see your responses. Taking down Godric, we climb his divine tower and acquire his great rune. Next we go on a small boss gauntlet starting with Renala and ending with Makar. Since I knew my damage was so low, I want to continue taking down these early to mid game bosses. Renala will give a fair amount of runes alongside taking her down. The Crystallion was to get access to the early smithing stones. Lastly, Makar's fight will give a fair number of runes and will grant us the ability to venture into Altus Plateau. Since I started doing these status only runs, I enjoyed collecting most if not all the weapons in that class. Some classes like Bleed will be tough since there are so many different weapons that I would have to grab, so I plan to do something different in that challenge. Trying to collect the next various rounds of weapons, we must invade some NPC worlds. After defeating the second NPC, Tanith and Mount Gelmir will reward the player with a Serpent Bone Blade. This thing is really fun. Subsequently, we do another boss gauntlet. Heading back to Caelid, we take on General Radahn. Since we made our way into Altus, the waygate to his arena was opened, allowing us to fight him. Next was Morgott, who stands before us blocking the entrance to the Erdtree. Lastly, Fire Giant. Poison was fairly useful in these fights, but more so in Radahn and Fire Giant's fights. That poison proc helped me get a ton of extra damage on Radahn before he was shot into the stratosphere for his phase 2 attack. Fire Giant can be tough in phase 2, especially with his damage resistance, so getting poison procs was actually super useful. Eventually though, we take down these tough remembrance bosses. Entering Farum Azula, we progress until we come across Godskin Duo and Malekith the Black Blade. There is a third boss in this zone, but we will come back later for him. Using the parry strategy in both fights was really fun, and let me get a ton of damage on them. Near the start of the run, I actually took down Bernal since I knew I wasn't going to defeat Rykard before Malekith. This gave me the item to parry Malekith's golden attacks, which is super fun. Godskin's fight has that banger soundtrack, which is always nice to hear. As always with Malekith, he is such a cool fight, only for him to have no health, and the fight ends pretty quickly. Ultimately, we take down these bosses, so let's keep progressing. Grabbing the various medallion pieces to enter consecrated snowfields, we reach Mohg, Lord of Blood. We did get a few poison procs, but to be honest, the damage is not doing the best. This was miles better than Deathblight, Madness, and Sleep, but then compared to Frost, Bleed, and Rot, it just seems very subpar. Hopefully going through more of the main game and then eventually the DLC will give us more insight into where these weapons shine and where they fall off. After some time, we take down Moog and now have access to the DLC. Entering Miquella's Erdtree, we rush through the zone until we come across Melania Blade of Miquella. Doing a bunch of charge attacks in combination with jump attacks, we break her stance over and over. In phase 2, she will become ultra aggressive, but so will we. Timing our dodges, attacking when she gives us openings, and managing our stamina, we push through her fight. Eventually, Melania, goddess of rot, gets taken down. Using the transporter chest in Weeping sends us to Lindell. We use a waygate to reach Melania's Great Rune. Next, we go to Mount Gelmir and into Rykard's fight. Using Melania's Great Rune will let me regenerate some health from the lava alongside Rykard's various attacks. Poison was pretty useful in this fight, especially in his second phase. I can run away from those skulls that come crashing down and know that the poison is putting some work in. Especially in this fight, Frost would have been the best option, but Poison showed it can definitely do the trick. Ultimately, we take down Rykard, Lord of Blasphemy, and now we are one step closer to defeating all the Remembrance bosses. Before we head into the capital of Ash and finish the main game, I want to defeat the remaining bosses. We take on Regal Ancestor Spirit, Estelle Natural Born of the Void, Lich Dragon Fortisax, and Dragon Lord Placidusax. Poison was fairly useful in these fights, though with Regal Ancestor Spirit, it was just the pure physical damage. Placi is always such a fun fight. Getting to his phase 2 and seeing him pull out those Madir laser beams, I always find extremely enjoyable, though when I die to that move, it becomes a different story. Making our way into the capital of Ash, we fight Sir Gideon Ofnir and Godfrey First Elden Lord. Out of these two, the one that gave me the most trouble was Sir Gideon Ofnir. I really despise the fact that he can 1 to 2 shot the player with that debuff he puts on them. I think the one great thing about Poison is the fact it ticks and does a fair amount of damage, but then doesn't last as long, so I can keep proccing it. We take down both of these fools, and so let's claim the Elden Throne. Entering the Erdtree, we find Radagon waiting for us. I was actually pretty surprised that I was able to poison proc him. I knew beforehand that he could be frosted, but didn't know about poison and Scarlet Rot, so I guess you learn something new every day. Phase 2, Radagon taps out and has Elden Beast take his place. Poison, like all status effects in this fight, was useless because yeah, he's immune to everything. After some time, we take down the final Remembrance boss of the main game. We claim the Elden Throne as our own, then progress into the DLC. Divine Beast Dancing Lion is the first boss we will have to try to take down. This creature can be a real pain in the butt some playthroughs, but then others it will be the easiest thing. Well, in this run I actually did pretty well if I say so. Usually this fight will take 3+ attempts or more, but this was a first time win for us, which was huge. Next, I had a lot of fails in Relano's fight. This was partly due to me being kinda crap at the parrying timings and also how aggressive I was playing. Eventually though, I got this run. I made sure to really focus on the parrying timings and improving my ability to react to her. Eventually, I just kept parrying her over and over. Phase 2 is basically the same thing, but I like to play a tad bit more cautiously, since she has slightly more damage. Ultimately, we take her down, so let's progress further into the DLC and into the Shadow Keep. Subsequently, we take on Mesmer the Impaler and Bale the Dread. Poison was more useful on Mesmer as I was able to proc it more often. I found with Bale, especially in his second phase, it would be really hard to proc him with him moving so much. These are definitely two of the cooler DLC bosses, and it always is such fun to fight them, though they don't compare to Midra in my opinion. After some time, we take them down. I get absolutely annihilated by Putrescent Knight. After spending some time struggling with Putrescent Knight, I decided to switch to some different bosses, such as Erdtree Avatar, Commander Gaius, and Ramana, Saint of the Bud. I was only able to get poison on Commander Gaius, since the others are immune to it. Besides that, there isn't too much else to note in these fights. Because we took down Ramana and Mesmer, we were able to enter Anir Lim. Near the top, we find Needle Knight Leda and allies. Poison worked wonders in this fight. It helped since I could proc it on an NPC, then run away as the two of them would close in for attacks. I believe Rot would have been better, but we will have to see when we eventually test that. At the top of Anir Elim, we find Promised Consort Radon. Using the parry strategy, we parry this fool into submission. This may not be the most optimal playstyle, but is one I tend to enjoy. While the boss fight is playing, I want to talk about a few things. The newest patch in Elden Ring changed Radon's attack speed, alongside various other tweaks. I will showcase a few clips side by side to illustrate the difference, but it is definitely noticeable. Do I think he need to get patched? Yes, but only that cross-swing attack. Otherwise, I thought every other attack was avoidable. One thing I saw online was that initial AoE attack that Mikola does, aka Mikola's Light, was near impossible to dodge. I don't know, at least for me, the boss does a pretty easy to distinguish pose alongside a clear audio cue. I'm curious to hear below, do you think Radahn and Mikola should have been patched? On the other hand, were the patches needed, or some gray area in between? I'm interested in hearing your feedback. Finally, we take down a god and lord. Returning to Bellerot, we grab the poison hand fist weapons. Next, we sound the two bells. Entering Mother of Fingers and Midra's fights, we take them on. Similar to other DLC bosses, poison was helpful, but very little. It was nice, especially during bosses' super moves, to see them continually take damage when I couldn't attack. But still, I think Bleed, Frost, and even Rot would be better. And during the final Remembrance boss's fight, we take it on. Utresan Knight was one of the first bosses in the DLC I want to take down, but then I kept getting my butt handed to me. Saving the Knight for the end I thought was best because I would have had slightly higher damage and defense. Unfortunately, this boss cannot be poisoned, which is pretty surprising. My first playthrough I rawed it, so I was shocked to see it couldn't be poisoned. Since we can't poison the knight, I knew I had to be careful. Dodging its ultimate move where the horse and knight attack in unison, managing our stamina and attacking at opportune times, we take down the last Remembrance boss. This has been Elden Ring with poison only. We beat the main game and DLC alongside defeating all the Remembrance bosses. As the video wraps up, I will showcase some PvP matches using the poison weapons we picked up throughout the challenge run. Is poison worth it in Elden Ring? I would say no. It is definitely not the worst, but I wouldn't say it is amazing either. It was miles better than Madness or Deathblight, but Bleed or Frost would be much better. In regards to PvP, I think Poison does a little bit better here. I found it extremely useful to get that Poison proc, then switched to one of the other weapons I found better at dealing damage. When myself or the opponent would retreat backward, it would ease my mind slightly to know they were getting continually damaged. Another thing is that Whip's Ash of War in PvP was shredding. If you are looking for a good poison PvP weapon, or just a good PvP weapon in general, I recommend the Whip first, and then the Serpent Bone Blade, which is that katana. Thank you for tuning into the video and channel. Make sure to smash the like button, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already. Try to do something kind for someone today, whether it's a small or large gesture. This is your boy Skilled Fawn, and I'm out.